before the realm burned, before swords rang beneath the red keep, before a king whispered, "Burn them all," with madness shining in his eyes, there was hope. Aerys Targaryen was not born a monster. He rose to the throne young, brilliant, charming, beloved by lords and small folk alike. His reign began in peace, a golden age of feasts, alliances, and promise. But like all fires, what begins as warmth can grow into destruction. Whispers of paranoia crept into his mind. Shadows lingered behind council doors, and power, once a crown, became a cage he could not escape. The king who laughed among friends became the ruler who trusted no one, and the realm trembled beneath his fear. Advisors withdrew, allies turned cold. Only pyromancers remained at his side, feeding his curiosity with tales of ancient flames and sorcery born from death. He looked upon wildfire not as weapon, but as salvation. And in the final days, when rebellion rose and drums of war shook Westeros, the king stood alone in a fortress filled with hidden jars of living green fire, whispering to himself, "If I cannot rule this kingdom, then no one shall." Tonight, we walk through the rise and fall of Aerys II Targaryen, the last Dragon King, the mad ruler of King's Landing, the flame that consumed a dynasty. Close your eyes. Breathe. The story begins where all tragedies do, with a promise. Long before he was a king, before whispers of insanity clung to his name, Aerys Targaryen was simply a prince, young, radiant, and full of dreams. Born into the royal halls of King's Landing, he carried the silver hair and violet eyes of ancient Valyria, a living symbol of dragon blood and legacy. Those who saw him in childhood spoke of a boy bright with curiosity, fascinated by tales of old kings, obsessed not with battle, but with greatness. Aerys wanted to be more than a ruler. He wanted to be remembered. Unlike princes hardened by war, he grew up in a time of peace. No foreign invaders, no dragons left to command, no threats large enough to shape him into steel. The realm was calm, but calm waters do not always raise strong kings. In those early days, Aerys dreamed of rebuilding the glory of Valyria, of returning magic to the world, of ruling not just as king, but as a legacy reborn. And beside him walked another young soul, confident and sharp as a drawn blade. Tywin Lannister. Where Aerys was charisma and imagination, Tywin was discipline and precision. Together, they were unstoppable. One a dreamer crowned by destiny, the other a mind carved for rule. Courtiers whispered that when Aerys inherited the throne, with Tywin at his side, Westeros would enter a new age of prosperity. And perhaps, if time had been kinder, that future might have become reality. Some seeds bloom into flowers, others grow into thorns. And within Ares, even in youth, those thorns already waited. Small, hidden, silent, waiting for the moment they would pierce the realm. When Ares ascended the Iron Throne, the realm held its breath. The boy of dreams had become a king of promises. He walked the halls of the Red Keep with confidence in his eyes, and the crown, still new upon his brow, gleamed beneath crystal chandeliers. The small folk adored him. Lords bowed eagerly, seeing in him not the legacy of fading dragons, but the spark of a new age. And beside him, standing tall in polished gold and crimson, was the man who would shape his early reign. Tywin Lannister, Hand of the King. If Ares was fire, Tywin was stone, steady, unyielding, forged for power. Together, they were balance. Gold flowed into the kingdom, debts settled, laws enforced, rebels crushed before their sparks could grow. The nobles praised the king's brilliance, but they feared the hand that enforced it. Ares shone, Tywin worked. And in those early years, it almost seemed destiny had chosen well. There were grand feasts, banners of red and gold fluttering across the capital, and whispers that the Targaryen legacy might rise once more, even without dragons. Yet, beneath the glory, a quiet strain began to grow. The more praise Tywin received, the more Ares felt overshadowed, diminished by the very man who made his triumphs possible. This jealousy began not as fire, but as a spark, a restless itch beneath a crown that suddenly felt heavier than before. Ares smiled in public, but in the privacy of his throne room, his voice softened to a, "I am the king, not him." And though the realm flourished, something fragile shifted inside him. Not madness yet, but a shadow of what would come. Great tyrants do not wake mad. They become mad, piece by piece, wound by wound, fear by fear. For Ares II, the first cracks appeared not in battle, but in the throne room itself. As the realm prospered under Tywin Lannister's reforms, the lords of Westeros praised the hand of the king more than the king himself. They admired Tywin's strength, his discipline, his unwavering will, while Ares, still young and proud, found himself standing in his shadow. Some courtiers whispered carelessly, "Tywin is the true power in the realm. The lion roars louder than the dragon now." These were words meant as gossip, but to Ares, they were daggers. Every success attributed to Tywin felt like a theft. Every praise for the hand felt like mockery of the crown. Jealousy grew into resentment, a quiet storm beneath silk robes and polite smiles. And then came the wound that poisoned everything. When Tywin's wife, Joanna Lannister, visited court, a woman admired for her beauty, wit, and grace. Eris let his envy slip into cruelty. Before the royal court, beneath chandeliers dripping with gold, he spoke words that cut deeper than steel. "It is said your lady wife was so proud, she refused to suckle your newborn son. A pity. I should have liked to know if the rumors were true." Laughter rippled through the hall. But Tywin did not laugh. Their friendship, once bound by youth and ambition, fractured in that moment. A king insecure. A hand humiliated. It was the first venomous break between crown and lion. And Eris, instead of regret, felt a dark satisfaction, as though belittling Tywin restored the balance of power. The seed of paranoia had been planted. Soon it would grow roots, wrapping around his mind like wildfire beneath stone. Every reign has a moment, a single fracture, where a king stops ruling with reason and begins ruling with fear. For Aerys II, that moment was Duskendale. What began as a political dispute quickly spiraled into betrayal. The town's lord, Dennis Darklyn, demanded special privileges from the crown, trade rights, autonomy, power carved from royal authority. When the court refused, Darklyn did the unthinkable. He kidnapped the king. Aerys arrived in Duskendale with pride, believing his presence alone would end the rebellion. But instead of fealty, he found chains. He was thrown into a dark cell. No council, no guards, no crown. Days passed in darkness. Food was scarce. Torchlight never reached the floor. And in that quiet, the king listened to his own thoughts, whispers growing louder than the world outside. He imagined betrayal everywhere, lords plotting his death, Tywin waiting to seize the throne, enemies rising from shadows. Even when the rebellion was crushed and Sir Barristan Selmy rescued him, cutting through guards alone to free his king, Aerys did not come back the same. He walked out of the darkness, thinner, hollow-eyed, trembling beneath his crown, and something cold followed him. He stopped trusting. He stopped forgiving. He stopped listening to reason. The first order he gave upon returning to King's Landing was not of justice, but of vengeance. Everyone linked to Duskendale was burned alive. Men, women, servants, their homes, their names, their bloodlines, erased in flame. And as screams echoed across stone walls, Aerys watched with silent fascination, bathed in the reflection of fire. The courtiers whispered. The king was reborn in that cell. He left part of himself in the dark, but others spoke truer words. That was the day he went mad. After Duskendale, the king did not return to ruling. He returned to burning. The darkness of that cell left something fractured inside him. A quiet voice whispering that no throne is safe, no lord loyal, no ally trustworthy, and fear, left to grow unchallenged, became obsession. Aerys sought not gold, nor armies, nor diplomacy. He sought power older than kings. He turned to the pyromancers, keepers of ancient Valyrian flame, men robed in soot-black cloth, who worshipped wildfire like a holy relic. Their chambers beneath King's Landing stretched like catacombs, filled with hidden jars of green, living fire that burned hotter than dragon flame. To most rulers, wildfire was a weapon of last resort. To Aerys, it was a destiny. He spent hours watching it burn, entranced by its beauty, its silence, its promise. Fire purifies, he whispered. Fire obeys. Fire remembers. His counsel warned him of the danger. Wildfire spread uncontrollably, consuming cities, armies, children without distinction. But Aerys did not seek control. He sought purification. He dreamed of reshaping the world into something new, reborn not by rule, but by flame. He ordered more jars, thousands, hidden beneath the Red Keep, beneath marketplaces, stables, and docks, lining the veins of the capital like liquid death waiting to awaken. Historians later called them caches. Aerys called them salvation. In his mind, fire was no longer a weapon. It was the future of his reign. He believed the flames loved him, that they spoke to him, and with every jar stored, every pyromancer welcomed to court, every whisper of betrayal he imagined, he moved one step closer to choosing destruction over rule. A king once crowned by hope, now ruled by fear. And soon, fire would not just be his obsession. It would be his answer to everything. Once they stood side by side. Aerys, the young king, and Tywin Lannister, the unbreakable hand. Together, they brought order, wealth, and fear to the realm. But power is fragile, and Aerys's growing paranoia twisted admiration into jealousy. The court praised Tywin's strength, his discipline, his victories. They whispered that Tywin, not Aerys, ruled the Seven Kingdoms. And each whisper, each bow granted more to the lion than the dragon, carved deeper wounds into the king's pride. Slowly, the king began to turn on the only man who had truly stood beside him. He denied Tywin honors. He reversed his decrees. He humiliated him in council, but the moment that shattered their bond came with a birth. When Tywin's wife, Lady Joanna, died giving birth to their son, a child named Tyrion, Aerys left. In a hall lit by braziers and gilded banners, he murmured coldly, "The gods mock you, Lord Tywin, gifting you a twisted dwarf for an heir." The words cut deeper than steel. The court fell silent, and Tywin, proud and unbending, sealed his grief beneath a mask of gold and ice. From that day forward, he served the realm, not the king. Aerys sensed the shift and fear consumed him further. What if Tywin wanted the throne? What if the lion roared louder than the dragon again? When lords proposed that Tywin's son Jaime should marry Princess Rhaella, binding lion and dragon in blood, Aerys refused, not out of strategy, but out of spite. Worse still, he placed Jaime in the Kingsguard, stripping Tywin of his heir, trapping Jaime in white armor and vows that forbade land, marriage, or legacy. To the realm, it was a great honor. To Tywin, it was an insult, a stolen future, a king driven by paranoia, a hand driven by pride. Their partnership, once the core of a golden age, became a silent battlefield. And as their alliance crumbled, the realm lost the balance that kept Aerys tethered to sanity. Without Tywin's restraint, there was nothing left between the king and the fire. While Aerys descended deeper into fear, another figure quietly rose from his shadow. A prince born not of madness, but of prophecy. Rhaegar Targaryen. He entered the world in tragedy. Born on the same night a massive fire consumed Summerhall, the final attempt to hatch dragon eggs through flame and sorcery. Some said he cried like any child. Others swore he did not cry at all, that he simply watched the smoke with unblinking violet eyes. From his earliest days, he stood apart. Where other princes sought feasts, tournaments, indulgence, Rhaegar sought knowledge. He spent hours in libraries, fingers tracing ancient scrolls, eyes drifting over prophecies of flame and shadow. One day, he stumbled upon a text that changed him forever. A passage foretelling a warrior reborn, a savior forged in fire to stand against the darkness. He closed the book slowly, whispering to the dust between pages. It seems I must be a warrior. And from that moment, he trained. Not out of pride, nor hunger for glory, but because he believed the world would need him. The realm adored him, graceful, noble, melancholy, a singer with the heart of a knight and the soul of a scholar. Where Aerys inspired fear, Rhaegar inspired hope. And that contrast cut the king like a knife. In council chambers, nobles bowed deeper to the prince than to the king. In taverns, people whispered that Rhaegar should inherit sooner, that the crown would shine brighter with a different ruler seated upon it. Aerys heard every whisper, and in his twisted mind, admiration for his son curdled into resentment. The king began to fear not only lords and rebels, but his own blood. He saw betrayal in Rhaegar's silence, treason in his grace, a threat to his throne in every gentle smile. The prince sought prophecy. The king saw conspiracy. And so, father and son, dragon and dragon, drifted apart like stars divided by night. Rhaegar walked toward destiny. Aerys walked toward ruin. And soon, their paths would collide in a tragedy that would end a dynasty. The realm did not fall in a single night. It unraveled, thread by thread, choice by choice, until the crown could no longer hold its weight, and many believe the first thread was pulled at a place of ash and ghosts. Harrenhal, the largest castle in Westeros, built by pride and destroyed by dragonfire, stood silent for generations, a burned monument to hubris. But in one fateful year, it came alive again. Lords, knights, singers, and nobles gathered under its broken towers for a grand tourney hosted in honor of spring. The air shimmered with banners, silk dresses, silver cups of wine, steel glinting beneath the sun. And at the center of it all, a single knight who rode not for glory, but for purpose. Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. He won the tournament with calm, devastating grace, unhorsing every challenger with the silent resolve of a man chasing destiny. But it was not the victory that cracked the realm. It was the moment he rose, crowned with triumph, carrying a garland of blue roses. Tradition demanded he crown his wife, Princess Elia Martell, as the queen of love and beauty. Instead, he walked past her, past the royal dais, past the nobles who watched in breathless silence, and he stopped before another girl, young, wild, northern, with eyes like a storm at sea. Lyanna Stark. Rhaegar placed the crown upon her lap, thorns wrapped in blue petals, a symbol older than vows. Gasps rippled through the field. Not whispers, but shock sharp enough to echo. Some saw romance. Others saw betrayal. The king saw treason. Aerys's lips curled into a trembling smile, eyes narrowing beneath torchlight, voice poisoned with suspicion. My son seeks to replace me. In that moment, two stories began. A love that would defy kingdoms, and a war that would end a dynasty. Because from blue roses would come blood, and from one crowning gesture would rise the flames of rebellion. After the tourney of Harrenhal, the realm did not collapse immediately. It simply began to crack. Whispers followed Prince Rhaegar everywhere, of prophecy, of destiny, of a woman with wolf's blood in her veins. Lyanna Stark, wild, fierce, untamed, had never belonged to the silk halls of southern courts. She rode like a storm, spoke with a warrior's honesty, and carried a heart too proud to bend. But she was promised to another, Robert Baratheon, a match of alliance, a future written in signatures, not affection. Then she vanished. Some say Rhaegar carried her away under the shade of moon and armor, stealing a northern daughter for reasons no one understood. Others say she left willingly, riding south with the prince she chose, not as captive, but as lover. History stands divided. Kidnapping or elopement. What is known is this: she disappeared, and Rhaegar with her. The king, already drowning in paranoia, declared it treason, not scandal. In his mind, The wolves and the lions and the stag were conspiring to overthrow him, using his own son as the spark. His voice echoed across council chambers, thin, sharp, trembling with fury. They mean to depose me, all of them. Brandon Stark rode to King's Landing, demanding Rhaegar face him in combat. A young wolf, reckless and furious, fire in his veins, steel ready to speak for him. But Aerys did not grant him a duel. He granted him death. Brandon was strangled by his own strength, a cruel execution ordered with cold fascination. His father, Lord Rickard Stark, was burned alive in armor, roasted over wildfire as the king watched, whispering to the flames, "Burn them all." Robert stored vengeance. Jon Arryn raised banners. Eddard Stark marched to war. The disappearance of one girl became the beginning of a rebellion, a storm that would topple dragons, rewrite bloodlines, and end a dynasty 3 centuries old. And somewhere beyond these fires, Lyanna lay hidden, her fate entwined not with politics, but with prophecy. The death of House Stark's heir did not silence the realm. It shook it. Brandon Stark strangled before the court. Rickard Stark burned in armor by wildfire. These were not executions. They were acts of war. And the first lord to rise was not Stark, nor Baratheon, but Jon Arryn, Lord of the Vale, a man who had raised both Ned Stark and Robert Baratheon as his wards. When King Aerys demanded he surrender them for execution, Jon did not bend. He unsheathed his sword and raised his banners instead. And so the realm heard a name spoken like thunder from the mountains. Robert Baratheon is king. Storm's End answered the call. Winterfell answered the call. The Vale, Riverlands, North, and Stormlands all marched beneath the same oath. Aerys must fall. The king, now consumed entirely by paranoia, saw rebellion everywhere, not just in armies, but in shadows, in whispers, in the very air he breathed. He summoned pyromancers to create more wildfire, locked himself away in the Red Keep, and spoke to flames more than to counsel. The Iron Throne grew sharper beneath him. Courtiers said he cut himself more often now, bleeding down the steps of the throne like a sacrifice to his own fear. Battles erupted across Westeros. The Battle of Summerhall, the battles in the Vale, the siege of Storm's End. Robert fought with fury, not for power, but for love and vengeance. Ned fought with duty, calm, precise, relentless. And yet, through all the bloodshed, Aerys never rode to battle. He clung to his throne, whispering to wildfire jars hidden beneath the capital. They cannot take the city if there is no city. The realm fought with steel. The king prepared to fight with flame. And as war raged, one truth became clear. This was no longer a political struggle, no longer a feud between houses. This was the world trying to stop a madman from burning his kingdom alive. War spread across the realm like wildfire, across dry summer fields. Houses bent the knee, armies marched, and every step of rebellion led to one inevitable place, the River Trident. There, beneath banners soaked in rain and blood, two destinies finally collided. Robert Baratheon and Prince Rhaegar Targaryen. One fought for vengeance, for Lyanna, for a realm freed from madness. The other fought for prophecy, for a future only he believed, a future he never lived to explain. The battlefield roared with chaos, spears splintering, horses screaming, shields cracking beneath warhammers and swords. Rain turned dirt to crimson mud, the river swallowing men whole. And at the height of battle, the world seemed to pause as Robert and Rhaegar met at the river's edge. Robert, armor dented and soaked in sweat, lifted his warhammer, a brutal weapon forged for crushing kings. Rhaegar sat mounted in black armor, rubies glimmering on his breastplate like spilled drops of blood. They said he looked beautiful in that moment, a ghost of old Valyria, elegant, tragic, doomed. Their weapons clashed like thunder. Robert fought with fury, with rage, with love torn from him. Rhaegar fought with purpose, calm and graceful, each blow deliberate, the strike of a man who believed destiny stood at his back. But destiny is not steel. It does not block a hammer. It does not save a dying king. With one final swing, Robert shattered the rubies from Rhaegar's armor, sending them scattering into the river like stars falling into water. The prince fell. His blood drifted across the trident in ripples of red and black. Men spent years searching for those rubies, believing them jewels. But they were pieces of a legacy drowned beneath the current. When the battle ended, silence fell over the field. Even victory felt heavy. For with Rhaegar's death, the war no longer felt like rebellion. It felt like a funeral march for a dynasty. The tide turned, the crown trembled, and in the Red Keep, far from the battlefield, Aerys listened to reports in disbelief, whispering through cracked lips. My son was my heir, but grief never softened him. It only hardened his resolve. If the realm came for his throne, he would not surrender it. He would burn it. With Rhaegar dead and his armies broken, the rebellion marched south, not for battle, but for an ending. King's Landing, once a jewel of the realm, stood trembling beneath black clouds and red banners. Aerys II remained inside the Red Keep, pale, thin, sleepless, a king cornered by the world he feared. Tywin Lannister, silent for months, now approached the capital with tens of thousands of soldiers, armor gleaming gold beneath the gates. He asked entry as a loyal ally, and Aerys, desperate for salvation, ordered the gates opened. The city welcomed lions. The lions brought fire and blood. King's Landing was sacked. Men were butchered in the streets. Women dragged screaming through alleys. Homes set ablaze. Gold looted by men who once bowed to the crown. Tywin had not come to save the king. He had come to end him. In the Red Keep, Aerys shook with terror, spittle on his lips, eyes wild beneath tangled silver hair. He turned not to lords or soldiers, but to pyromancers. Wildfire caches lay hidden beneath the city, beneath stables, marketplaces, granaries, enough to turn King's Landing into a green inferno. As screams echoed through the throne room halls, he whispered the words that would define his legacy. Burn them all. Not the rebels, not the Lannisters. Everyone. If the world dared take his throne, he would deny them a kingdom to rule. The pyromancers rushed to obey, torches ready to ignite the city's veins. But one man stood in their way. A young knight, cloaked in white, sworn to protect the king above all else. Sir Jaime Lannister. He had taken vows to guard Aerys, yet he had also sworn to guard the realm. And in that moment, protecting the king meant destroying the world. Jaime chose the world. He killed the pyromancer first, blade swift, silent, final. Then he turned to the throne. Aerys shrieked, spitting madness through cracked teeth, screaming his command one last time. Burn them all! Jaime ran him through. Steel pierced flesh. The last Targaryen king collapsed in a pool of his own blood at the foot of the Iron Throne he loved so dearly. No roar, no curse, only silence. And so ended a dynasty, not with ceremony, but with a single, quiet stroke of a lion's sword. Jaime stood alone, bathed in blood and torchlight, staring at a throne made of swords, a throne that had taken a king and given back a monster. Outside, the city burned. Inside, the flames died. The Mad King was dead. His blood cooled upon the marble steps. Blade still lodged where a throne of swords pierced his final breath. Outside, the rebellion cheered, believing the realm saved. Inside, the dragon dynasty collapsed. Its fall was not a single moment, but a chain of endings. Prince Rhaegar lay drowned in rubies at the Trident. His children, innocent and unknowing, were slain in the chaos of the sack. Their lives extinguished not by war, but by vengeance, wearing gold and crimson. Princess Elia Martell, gentle and frail, met a death whispered in horrified rumors, stained forever across history. The blood of Valyria, once the pride of the realm, spilled into the stones of King's Landing, like ink fading from a forgotten page. Only two survived. Viserys, a boy clinging to a legacy he barely understood, and Daenerys, born in storm and exile, last daughter of a fallen house. They fled across the narrow sea with servants, coins, and ghosts, forced to wander lands where dragons were myth and their name meant ruin. The Iron Throne, still dripping with the blood of its king, did not stay empty long. Robert Baratheon was crowned, a hammer rising where dragons once ruled, cheered by lords hungry for peace and by kingdoms eager to forget. Yet victory did not wash the stain of the crown. Jaime Lannister, white cloak soaked red, knelt beside the corpse of the man he'd sworn to protect, knowing history would never call him savior, only Kingslayer. Tywin watched from the shadows, a quiet architect of endings, not king, not hero, but the hand guiding the future's shape. And somewhere, far beyond ships and storms, Daenerys, still a child, listened to stories of the father she never knew. Stories painted in fear, in fire, in madness. Aerys the Second Targaryen became legend, not as the king he wished to be, but as the warning history needed. A ruler who mistook power for destiny. A king who trusted fire more than people. A dynasty ended by its own flame. And so, the last dragon died not by sword, not by rebellion, but by the madness he nurtured himself. The realm returned to peace. But peace built on ash always carries the smell of smoke. The death of Aerys ended a reign, but not its echo. Kingdoms may change rulers. Thrones may change hands. Yet history moves like a river, pulling shadows forward long after the flames have died. The Mad King did not simply fall. He left wounds. Wounds carved into men, into cities, into the memory of Westeros itself. Robert Baratheon built his rule not on hope, but on rage shaped by Aerys's cruelty. Every law he passed, every Targaryen he hunted across the sea, every battle he fought was a war against ghosts. Tywin Lannister rose higher than ever, a man who had toppled a king without ever sitting on the throne. His power grew not through loyalty, but through fear. The same poison that once ruled Aerys. Jaime Lannister carried the heaviest curse. He saved a kingdom, killed a tyrant, stopped a genocide. Yet history spat only one name upon him: Kingslayer. His honor stained by the very act that preserved the realm. And far across the narrow sea, a girl with silver hair learned to walk with legacy in her shadow. Daenerys Targaryen grew up surrounded by whispers. Daughter of the Mad King. Some looked to her for hope. Others feared she carried her father's flame in her blood and mind alike. She heard stories of his rage, his cruelty, his final words drenched in fire. Burn them all. And though she dreamed of peace, of breaking chains, of reclaiming a stolen throne, she also dreamed in fire, for blood does not forget. And the same flames that consumed Aerys flickered quietly in her heart, waiting not for madness, but for purpose. Across generations, Aerys's legacy did not vanish. It shaped wars, shaped rulers, shaped the fate of kingdoms that followed. A king who tried to destroy the realm became the reason another crossed oceans to save it, and perhaps to burn it anew. His reign was a warning. His fall was a beginning. The story of the Mad King is not merely a tale of downfall. It is a mirror held to power itself. Ares began as a prince of promise, bright-eyed beneath golden chandeliers, dreaming of greatness. He ended as a shadow, alone in a burning throne room, whispering to wildfire instead of people. His reign teaches us that fear can rot even the brightest heart, that isolation can twist purpose into obsession, and that a crown cannot save a king from himself. Yet, from the ashes he left behind, destiny did not fade. It scattered across oceans, across bloodlines, across centuries of memory. In a storm, a daughter was born. In silence, a legacy waited. And far from the ruined throne where a dynasty died, a new flame stirred. Not of madness, but of rebirth. The realm survived Ares, but it never forgot him, because some fires die with the night, and others lie beneath the ashes, waiting for breath, waiting for destiny, waiting for a name strong enough to call them back to life. Sleep now, wanderer. Let history rest beside you, like quiet embers in the dark. For tomorrow, new stories rise, from dragons, from kings, from the echoes of fire and blood.